The Susan Brender Show is a radio show online broadcasted on YouTube across the United States and globally. The show features guests who speak about health, spirituality, entertainment, and a host of subjects to enlighten people across the nation. Listen to the show that empowers women and men alike and highlights those who have made a difference. I'm Susan Brender, and this is the Susan Brender Show. Today I have an author, a motivational speaker, and a person who's written so many books that are so interesting that you would love to meet him, believe me. And the situation today, I want to talk about that for a minute. And I should mention his name, and his name is Michael Solomon. I almost forgot to tell the audience that. Now, with this said, you know, there's a showdown over Omar's comments exposes sharp divisions among Democrats. Representative Omar appears to equate U.S. and Israeli atrocities with those of Hamas and the Taliban, prompting outrage at a time when her party needs unity to maintain its slim majority. What do you think of that, Michael? Because, you know, this woman has been spouting all kinds of anti-Semitic responses to when people speak to her, and I'm just wondering what you think of what is going on in the world today.
You know, if she was in the position she's in under FDR back in the 40s, she would probably be tried for treason and anti-American activities. It's unbelievable that we could allow a woman like that to be a representative in Congress. And it's frightening. So I don't know. I mean, she has no idea what she's talking about. I'll give her 15 minutes to live in Syria or one of the terrorist countries or Iran and let her open her mouth like that against Iran and see what happens. They'd hang her in 15 minutes. They wouldn't even have a trial. So, I mean, you know, it's amazing that she can get away with it in here, and they keep spouting, it's okay, it's the First Amendment, she has the right to do that. Sure she does, except one thing, is she screaming fire in a theater? Absolutely. I mean, they talked about, you know, years ago they used to talk about the First Amendment is fine, freedom of speech is great, but you just can't yell fire in a theater. Well, when they gave permits to the KKK to march in Skokie, Illinois against the Jews, is that yelling fire in the theater? So what she's doing is no different than what they did then, screaming anti-Semitic remarks and anti-Christian remarks. I mean, to me, it's screaming fire in a theater. So
yeah, you know, we're dealing with the G7 conference, and a lot of the talk is all about climate change. I'm just wondering whether you think that climate change is a reality or whether or not they're just spouting again, or just something that they don't even know enough about.
Susan, my next book, which will probably be out in the fall, is titled is not called Global Climate Change, it's called Gorebal Climate Change, named after Al Gore, Gorebal, climate change, because if you spout a lie long enough, people are going to start to believe it. He was interviewed back in the 90s, and he said that he got his theory, remember, it's still a theory, which is conjecture. It's not been proven yet. It's a hypothesis. He said he got that when he read Michael Crichton's book, State of Fear. Michael Crichton said publicly at a lecture at UCLA before he passed away that he spoke to Al Gore and he told him to stop spouting quotes from his book about climate change because his book is fiction, and it'll always be fiction. So, and he said, yeah, no, I mean, you know, anybody who's read it knows it. I mean, Crichton was a brilliant writer. I wish I had 20% of what he can do. He footnoted everything, and some of those footnotes weren't real. They were there to try to give credence to his theories, and it was made up theories and stuff. You know, it just doesn't happen. There are scientific principles which prove that global warming is not man-made. I mean, the perfect example is first of all, getting back to the G7 was a disaster. 90% of what was discussed at the G7 was all about climate change and the Paris Climate Accord. The Paris Climate Accord has nothing to do with climate. It has to do with the environment. It has to do with clean air and clean water. And the two largest polluters in the world that account for 35% of the pollution on the face of the earth are China and India, and they are exempt from the Paris Climate Accord till 2035, 14 years from now.
I'm so glad you're talking about that.
And even then, at the end of in 2035, they can get an extension and extend it to 2050. So give me a break. And Biden capitulated on every issue that the EU presented. Merkel, Johnson, and Macron are ecstatic because he basically told them to put in place all their plans for climate change, and the U.S. will pay for it at a cost of $10 trillion over the next 20 years. How are we going to do that? Where are we going to get $500 billion every year for the next 20 years? Again, the accord had nothing to do with climate. If we park every... Yeah, go ahead.
No, I'm just curious because why do so many people believe in the fact that there's climate change?
Because we're being gaslighted, Susan. We're being gaslighted. If you keep telling a lie more times than none, people are going to start to believe it. The press believes it. They don't believe it. They just keep doing it. Look what they did to President Trump. You know, was I a fan of his? Yeah, I was a fan of his for what he did to this country. Did I like what he was doing as far as tweeting and everything else? No. But look what the press did. They lied through their teeth, and we're finding out today that things were lies, total lies. Over the years.
I'm happy you mentioned that because one of the questions that I wanted to ask you is how the media affects all of this. You know, I was part of the media for quite some time, and I recognize
and I was a political analyst on 10 different shows. I've been on over 300 shows.
That's right.
I know how they work. I know what they've done to me personally, what some of the mainstream media has done to me personally, how they've cut me off because they didn't like my answers, and that's a fact. I could prove it.
Yeah. And how is it that people like Bill Maher, have so much influence on people? You know, when you listen to him and you hear what he has to say, and believe me, he's not on the right. He's definitely on the left. When you hear him talk, they believe him. People like that who are not even politicians.
Bill Maher started out as a comedian and a talk show host. He has never been a publicist. He has never been in media. So, you know, and that's basically it. You know, if you ever heard Johnny Carson on his show talking, he never once brought up politics or anything else. He never disparaged anybody in politics. He had presidents on his show and congressmen and senators, and never once disparaged anybody. You turn on late night TV today, and it scares me. I mean, these people they talk like it's fact. I mean, it's not. I mean, you know,
and they
what
have a big following,
what the media is
Michael.
Doing is unbelievable.
Yeah,
and people believe it.
Mm-hmm. That's the point.
I'll give you an example. I'll give you a perfect example. That what happened at the G7 just last week. Okay, the whole group: Macron, Merkel, Johnson, Biden, all of them. Okay, they wanted to make the point about oceans rising and global climate change. So they took a photo on the Caribbean Bay on the beach, and to show behind them how the sea was rising. Well, somebody was smart enough to go back to 1925 and take the same photograph with nobody standing there, and the sea levels have not risen. You know what causes sea levels to rise? Let me tell you what causes sea levels to rise. There's only one thing, okay? The moon. Have you seen the moon lately? The moon is 32,000 miles closer to the Earth than it's been in the last 75 years. All these giant full moons that we've been seeing lately, that's why there's floods on the streets in Miami and the tide is so high. But what they're not showing you is low tides, because if you go to the beach in Miami during low tide, you have to walk out another 50 feet to get to the water, because the low tides are lower and the high tides are higher, and they're only affected by the moon's gravitational pull. That is a fact. Somebody in Congress came up with a dumb solution 2 weeks ago and said maybe we should change the axis of the Earth and slow down its rotation. And that would cause the Earth, well, if you did that, you know what would happen? the oceans would flood everything. And you know who would be the recipient of it all? Anybody within anybody within, say, 1,000 miles of the equator. Because if you ever took a basketball and you spun it, in the middle of it is where the center of gravity is. And if you slow it down, things start to fall out. And what's going to fall out first are the oceans.
Interesting.
It's a simple scientific principle. We're not talking about theories here now.
No, but the point is that people are affected so much by listening to the media talk about
because they believe
climate change.
They believe
so how do you,
Here's
how
the
do you
facts.
combat that?
Well, how do you combat it? You put guys like me and other people on the mainstream media, and you talk about it. We have a lively debate. I dropped the gauntlet a year and a half ago to Al Gore. I said I would donate $50,000 to the charity of his choice if he would debate me on global climate change for 30 minutes on any public forum that people would watch. CNN, MSNBC, NBC, ABC, I didn't care. I will do that. And I am not a scientist, but I've studied a lot of it. I lectured on science all over the world. The last lecture I gave on global climate change was in Shanghai on a cruise ship with an audience of over 200 people. And they sat there when I got finished with my slide presentations and everything else with their mouths hung open. They said, how come they don't tell us this on the news? These are scientific facts. Let me give you a couple of scientific facts, okay?
Sure.
The one thing that creates carbon dioxide in the world are volcanoes. It is estimated that worldwide, one volcano eruption will emit approximately 1.5 million metric tons of carbon dioxide per day. That's 548 million tons per year, and that's one volcano. Okay? Right now, there are 33 measured degassing volcanoes in the world, which are producing 60 billion tons of carbon dioxide a year, which is unbelievable. Right now, there are a total of 150 known volcanoes which are becoming active. The volcano right now that's erupting in Greenland or in Iceland is pumping out over 270 tons of carbon dioxide a week. I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous. In 2019, it was a report by the National Academy of Science and Engineering that concluded that using CDR methods as scales that can safely say that's what's being deployed is that there is being 1 billion tons, of 10 gigatons of carbon dioxide per year being removed by natural causes. Natural causes is photosynthesis by plants that absorb CO2 and make oxygen. So now what do they want to do? They want to go to zero emissions within 10 years. If we go to zero emissions of CO2 in this country, you know what happens? Every plant dies.
Well,
there
I
will be no oxygen.
I have to interrupt you because, one of the things that I find very disturbing, if you will, is that our kids are taught that there is climate change, and they have all kinds of meetings and seminars, and they have the kids doing things like science. I don't know what to call them. Science. Excuse me, I can't get the word out. But science fairs. That's what I was really.
Sure. Let me tell you about science, Susan. When you and I were in school, because we're fairly, I may be a couple of years older than you. I don't know. But when you and I were in school, in public school, K through 12, do you remember things we used to learn in the third grade? Things like displacement, Archimedes' principle, not theory, principle. And the joke was he got in his bathtub and it overflowed, and he said, "Eureka! I found it." Okay, here's a statement I'm going to make. And it's absolutely scientifically true. And there's nothing anybody can do to change it. And you can prove it on your kitchen table with a glass of water. Here's what it is: if all the ice right now that's floating in the oceans, in the Arctic Circle and the Antarctic Circle, melted tonight, we would lose zero amount of beachfront property anywhere in the world. Nothing, not an inch. As a matter of fact, we would gain it because ice is 98.6% water and the rest is air. So it would be 1% less. And the reason, and how you can prove it on a kitchen table, you take a glass of water, fill it with ice above the rim, then pour water in it to the edge of the rim, and the ice is floating above it. Wake up tomorrow morning when that ice melts, that glass will not overflow. If that glass overflows, I will take that person, fly him to Paris, and buy him dinner at the finest restaurant in the world. It's on the Eiffel Tower on the 83rd deck. But I'm telling you, it cannot happen. It's impossible. It's a scientific principle of buoyancy. It will not happen. And here's
so
another thing.
Like? Yeah, go ahead.
The amount of CO. First of all, they talk about CO2 and SUVs and everything else. Okay, do you know what kind of gas comes out of the tailpipe of a car? Not carbon dioxide, carbon monoxide. Now, it is a chemical fact that if you take carbon monoxide and mix it with oxygen, it will produce CO2. There's only one problem. You got to mix it with 100% oxygen. The atmosphere in the world is only 21% oxygen. If we took 100% oxygen and floated it around the air, around the world, and mixed it with to mix it with carbon monoxide to produce CO2, the first person to light up a cigarette would blow the world to smithereens. It can't happen. It's impossible. So they're telling me that, I had a debate with somebody once on this, and he said, well, we're going to build gas cars that emit water from the tailpipe and not gases. I says, that's wonderful. I said, they're hydrogen cars. I says, number one, hydrogen is one of the most explosive gases in the world. Where are you going to store it? And I said, let's say that we could do it safely. I says, how would you like to be driving an 18,000-gallon high-test gasoline tanker down Route 95 from Boston towards the southern states, following behind 2,000 little hydrogen cars pumping water vapors on the road? And he said to me, what's wrong with that? There's nothing wrong with that. I says, really? How about it's the middle of February and they're laying down black ice? You want to be in that truck? And then he said to me, well, we can always heat the highways. I says, really? You're gonna put electrical grids underneath the roads? What's that going to cost in gas? And how much pollution are you going to cause? I mean, these are people. Nobody thinks out of the box. Here's something that they should know. Okay, everybody wants an EV, an electrical vehicle. What are you going to do 8 and 10 years from now when your battery in your Tesla needs to be replaced and you cannot put it anywhere because it's the dirtiest? Lithium is one of the dirtiest mined materials in the world.
So what did they say about that?
Material. What are you going to do with all of those batteries that you can't dump in landfills? Where are you going to put that pollution? Putting that in a landfill is like nuclear waste. I mean, this is a Tesla. It's my belief that if you look at how a Tesla's built, because of the waste and everything else in the battery and all the pollution that's producing the batteries, it's the dirtiest vehicle in the world. It may be clean because it's not burning any carbon or any gas, but it's certainly bad. And if you look at lithium, if those batteries happen to leak and you're driving that car, you're dead. That's a poison.
Yeah, but you know something, Michael? The interesting thing about people is that because of the way the media handles things and talks about things in different, kind of gives people an idea that this is the greatest thing on earth. We're talking about a battery that saves energy. That's what they think. And the problem with that is that you're debating that it doesn't. So, the question becomes, it
saves nothing, Susan. It absolutely saves nothing. How are they going to build the infrastructure to charge these batteries? How are they going to produce the electricity in the world? What are they going to use to produce the electricity? I mean, it's absolutely insane. It's absolutely insane.
Let's move ahead and talk a little bit about Biden. And again, you were talking about the G7, but what about Biden's behavior? It was really very weird.
It frightens me. Listen, I'm going to be honest with you, okay? I think his cognitive health state is frightening. I believe it's abysmal. I'm not a medical doctor. I'll never profess to be. But I've seen enough dementia patients in my life to recognize with that behavior. And when I see an elderly person shuffling and wandering aimlessly with a glassy stare in their eyes, I know what I'm looking at. And I don't have to be a medical doctor to see that. When I see a person with Alzheimer's or dementia trying to speak and can't find the words to say for more than 10 or 15 seconds, and he stands there staring off into space, even with notes in front of him, I know what I'm looking at. And when I see someone's wife have to come up to him, call him by name, then take him by the hand and lead him away like a puppy dog, I know what I'm looking at. And that's frightening. And if anybody out there thinks that this is just, it's not a big deal, Joe's being Joe. And when a president of the United States has to take a nap every day for an hour or two before lunch, and something's wrong. Something is absolutely wrong.
Well, what about Kamala? What about Kamala? What would happen if Biden?
Kamala is like the Joker in Batman. I mean, I've never seen anybody laugh so much in my life. She's walking around like everything's funny. She won't She won't even go down and visit the border. She was assigned that task. I would have been there on the plane the next morning. She doesn't want to go down there because of what's going on down there. She doesn't want the press following her and learning exactly what's happening. And the press knows what's going on. They won't report on it.
Well, that brings up the immigration issue, though, Michael, because
the immigration issue is abysmal. It is absolutely abysmal. We've got veterans. We've got homeless veterans lying in the streets that we're not housing and feeding. And we're feeding illegal immigrants coming over here. Oh, by the way, you can't call them illegal immigrants anymore. You have to call them undocumented persons. That's like calling a drug dealer on the corner an unlicensed pharmacist. Give me a break.
Yeah. So what would you do? I mean, if you were, say, and I bet you'd love this, if you were the president of the United States, how would you handle that? Because needless to say, they're coming in the thousands. And what about jobs? What about education? And what about the fact that other people...
How about critical race theory? How about critical race theory? My God, I've never had a racist bone in my body. You know, when I was in high school, Susan, I used to have, in those days we called them, they were Negroes. Nobody was black in those days, but I had friends who were black, used to come to my house for dinner. We used to break bread together. We used to go out together to the movies. We never had a problem. These were people I played ball with in the streets. Kids who lived on my boat. I mean, this was crazy.
How did that come to pass? How is it that people feel that there's so much prejudice in the world? Yes, I agree that years and years ago the blacks really had a problem, and, it's documented. But I always tell people, this is what I say. Years ago, I went to Fisk University, and I interviewed the Freedom Riders. And the thing is, people threw rocks at them, people threw sticks at them, they banged, hit them. But they marched for peace. And today, look what we have going. We have rioting on the streets. We have all kinds of problems with the police. I mean, and what about the police? Defunding the police. What do you think about that?
Here's my suggestion. I've made two suggestions out there. Okay. I want the mayor of New York City. I want the mayor of Portland and all these big cities, the mayor of Chicago. I want him to get in a police car one night and take a ride as a police officer. I'm not talking about in the back seat as a ride-along with two cops armed in front of you, okay? You want to defund the police, then you got to walk a mile in their shoes. Get in a radio car one night and patrol and go to calls and walk into a door, knock on a door, not knowing what's on the other side. In 1972, on June 1st, Susan, two people put guns to my head and pulled both triggers. By the grace of God, I wasn't shot. Both guns misfired. It was the Daily newspaper. My backup, I was working undercover. My backup fired one shot, hit one guy in the side of the face. The bullet went up around his head, never touched his brain, came out the other side and hit the guy in the elbow with the gun hand. I still have the newspaper clippings, and the whole thing was on the news that night because it happened in front of a news crew that was videotaping something else, and all the pieces came together. You couldn't write the scenario, okay? Yeah. The newspaper headlines for the next day said, "For the greatest shot since William Tell," turned to page 3, and they had the whole story in there. Okay, by the grace of God, I walked away without a scratch. But anyway, let the mayor of Chicago, let the mayor of San Francisco, let them get in a radio car and ride around in a police uniform and see what it's like out there. Because I got to tell you something, they would quit in a heartbeat. They want to put unarmed social workers in New York responding to domestic violence calls because they think it's a disturbed person. You knock on the door with some guy that's holding his wife with a butcher knife to her throat, and you're there in a suit and a tie or in a skirt and a blouse, and you're going to talk. What are you going to do? You're going to tell him to go take a time out in the corner? And give me a break.
Yeah.
You know how many police officers were shot? How many people were shot at? The one of the most dangerous calls in the world is a domestic violence call. Right. Domestic violence call. You don't know what you're getting into. All you know is that husband and wife or brothers or two sisters or whoever are arguing and fighting. One may or may not have a weapon. Nobody says they do. And they always lie. I mean, when they pick up the phone and they call the police, they always lie. Oh, my husband's got a gun and he's going to kill me. Okay, when you get there, the guy's sitting at the kitchen table drinking water. But, you know, or they tell you, oh, my husband's here and I got an order of protection. I got to get him out of the house. Please come up here. And when you get up there, the guy's got a shotgun against his wife's head. And if you step into the house, he's going to blow her away. You want to send a social worker to take care of that call? Come on. Give me a break. These people have no idea what police work is. No idea.
I agree. I can't agree more. And, you know, I'm hosting the show, and my son was a policeman, and he talked all about everything that you're mentioning. Now, we're almost at the end of the show, so, you know, Michael, I always like to hear the last word. So give us the last word, and I would appreciate it.
I'll give you my last word in 2 sentences. Number one, don't believe everything you hear or see. Look it up for yourself. Tell all your listeners that to research it themselves. And number 2 is something that I told one of the commentators on Fox News just before the last election. They asked me what my message is, and I said, I'm going to tell you who the most dangerous man in America is. The most dangerous, well, not man, but the dangerous person. The most dangerous person in America is an educated voter.
Wow. Well, we have to, you have to come back on at a certain point because we really have to delve into the issues. And maybe the next time that we meet, things will be changed and life will go on. But on the other hand, there'll be all kinds of things that we're listening to and, being skeptical about.
We'll try. On the other side of the coin, Susan, I have a new novel which is coming out in about 3 weeks. It should be on Amazon. I'm just reading over the first copy right now to see if there's any errors in it. And right now I'm finding nothing, so which is great. It's titled Under the Divvy Tree. It's a believe it or not, it's a love story entwined around a medical mystery. It's totally opposite of what I've been writing. And then I have another business book which should be coming out in the fall, which is Mental Agility: How to Shape Your Mind for Greater Success. But
fantastic.
Yeah, we're working on that. And anybody wants to know about me, they can go to my website, michaelsolomonbooks.com, and you can learn all about me. And I do public appearances any place somebody wants me.
Well, my guest today has been Michael Solomon. I'm sorry?
I say that's basically it. There isn't much more.
Oh, well, that's plenty, and I hope everybody goes to Amazon and to Barnes & Nobles and gets your books because it sounds like they're fabulous, and I know that when we read the other books, they were incredible. So thanks very much, Michael Solomon, for being the guest on the Susan Brender Show. Thank you. Bye now.